Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our coverage of reInvent 2024. You're watching theCUBE. My name is Dave Vellante. John Furrier is also in the house. KJ Joshi is here. He's the Global Managing Director for Platform Alliances at Equinix. Everybody knows Equinix. Great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Super. Actually, I loved having the conversation with Equinix because when the cloud first came out, they were like, oh, these guys are in big trouble. And we were always, no, watch what happens. And sure enough, it's just been a super cycle. I know that's sort of an overused term, but your business has been exploding and we've been following the ascendancy ever since. You play a critical role in the ecosystem. So how's it going? What's happening here at reInvent? Before we get into that, tell us about your role.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. I am responsible for managing all the hyperscaler partnerships across the major OEMs, hyperscalers, and some of the service providers. I've been with the company now 14 years, a couple of different roles, and most recently I've taken over Platform Alliances partnerships. So
yeah, and the trends are just off the charts, obviously AI, but the whole sovereign cloud thing is
Absolutely.
a tailwind for you guys, and that's real, isn't it?
Absolutely, the adoption is real. It's actually much more accelerated than cloud was because I'm talking about AI, sovereign AI, and where cloud was about 10, 12 years ago, AI is today. But the adoption rate of AI is going to be a lot faster than the cloud is. So we are expecting the market to be roughly around $300 billion for AI alone. And today, cloud market is at $300 billion. So think about how fast the market is adopting for AI.
Yeah, you're right. If you include kind of the hyperscalers, the big three, probably a couple $100 billion, then there's another $100 billion.
And the GPU as service providers, that's a new emerging segment.
Right.
Where you're seeing these specialty clouds like CoreWeave and Denver Data and Crusoe. And so that's going to be another $100 billion. So,
wow. And it's growing in deep double digits.
So we're talking 30 to 35% a year. So
what's happening at reInvent? You guys
super exciting times. We've had several conversations across a variety of partnerships. So we recently launched a couple of our services on AWS Marketplace. So a lot of conversations around that. We have also been advancing our discussions for our 50th upcoming location for Direct Connect. I won't be able to announce it now, but watch the space. We are at 49 already, and some really active discussions around our 50th location with AWS globally.
So a couple of things in the marketplace. IPWAN and Fabric Cloud Router. Can we get into those a little bit? Explain what they are, why they're relevant to customers. And
so Fabric Cloud Router is our level 3 software-based connectivity platform, which essentially allows enterprises to connect multiple clouds. And IPWAN is another backbone application that allows customers to connect across different regions. So let me explain this a little bit more. So Fabric Cloud Router, if a customer is looking at connecting Oracle OCI databases to AWS, then they can use Fabric Cloud Router in the same location. Now, if they want to connect two different regions, say Microsoft Azure in US West to AWS US East, they will be using IPWAN. So both these offerings are now generally available on AWS Marketplace.
So, and so this is a cross-cloud, multi-cloud.
That is correct.
We call it super cloud. We had fun with that several years ago. We kind of coined this term super cloud, but we saw that these clouds were coming together. People wanted to connect them. They didn't want to rip stuff out of one cloud and put it in multiple clouds. And so you're the sort of fabric.
We are
to enable that.
The network for the cloud. So we really are the backbone for the cloud. We have over 40% market share of all cloud ramps. So when you look at all the hyperscalers, we have more than 40% market share of their on-ramps.
Yeah.
The other thing that's changing from a definition perspective is what we call hybrid cloud. So earlier, hybrid cloud used to be considered as basically, so I have something on-prem and then I have something in the cloud. Now we are talking about connecting the two of them and actually doing partial workloads in the public cloud, but also keeping your data with yourself. So those are some of the use cases that are emerging. When we talk about multi-cloud, earlier it used to be I have some applications sitting in Azure, some applications sitting in AWS, but now we are talking about actually connecting the two of them and leveraging them across different platforms. So the definition of multi-cloud is evolving.
Are you saying that and you're absolutely right. Initially, multi-cloud was I have some stuff in this cloud and some stuff in that cloud, and they never talk to each other. And then we've actually featured firms like Walmart and Uber who are actually, their applications and their developer experience are spanning multiple clouds. That's kind of how we came up with the super cloud concept.
Right.
And so that's what you're talking about, right? The logic is actually spanning multiple clouds.
That is
data. Data might be in one cloud, but the workloads in another cloud, and those two need to come together.
Yeah, and not too long ago at Oracle Open World, we actually had Matt Garman, the CEO of AWS, was on the stage.
I was there
with Larry, and that would not have been a thought 4 years ago, right? And now we are talking about customers really talking about leaving their database with Oracle, but having it managed or analyzed using AWS tools. And so I think that the whole concept of keeping the existing workloads in your whatever cloud they are in, but leveraging other cloud tools, that's a really brand new concept.
So that was Ellison is just amazing. He's just so vibrant and engaged. And he declared, as you recall, the era of multi-cloud has begun. And Oracle they actually have a killer multi-cloud strategy. And it was kind of tongue-in-cheek in a way as a listener, because you say, oh, we've been talking about multi-cloud forever. However, as you just defined it, that is actually new. And Oracle was one of the sort of earliest to do it. They'd started with Azure, and now finally the border war with AWS ended, and now it was all love fest with Matt Garman, which, like you said, several years ago, you never would have seen that. So that was a big win for customers, wasn't it?
Indeed,
yeah.
Indeed, because a lot of enterprise workloads are sitting either with Microsoft or with Oracle, and now having the ability to leverage Google or AWS, but still keeping those workloads in Microsoft or Oracle, that's an amazing win for customers.
And so they're actually putting infrastructure like rack, in the clouds. And now, where do you fit? They'll do that as well in an Equinix location, correct?
Indeed. So we have two-pronged strategy. One is there are many workloads that are either not cloud ready now, or there's a lot of rewriting, refactorization that needs to be done. And in those instances, the customers that are getting out of their legacy data centers, they want to park those workloads somewhere. So what they're doing is they leave it at Equinix. So the true hybrid cloud scenario, where part of the workloads sit in a colocation facility and a part of the workloads are in public cloud. The second scenario where we are very critical is actually connectivity. So we are the backbone or the network for the clouds. So when a customer wants to connect and access AWS region, Equinix happens to be that connectivity platform for that. As I mentioned earlier, we have over 40% market share of all the cloud on-ramps globally. So we are an interconnection platform for the clouds. And for hybrid cloud, we are basically a home for parking your workloads when enterprises are exiting their existing data centers.
Last night, we were at an event. We saw James Hamilton. We were chatting with him. And he was sort of, he always gives a master class whenever you talk to James Hamilton. He was talking about the importance of networking and connectivity. And he was saying at the scale of AWS that we are today, you got to get networking right. Because if you don't get networking right, you spend so much and you basically saying waste. He didn't use that term, but you waste a lot of money on other resources that you need to accommodate the deficiencies of an inefficient network.
Indeed.
So I'm inferring the reason why you have 40% market share is because you have a very efficient and cost-effective networking strategy. And that has downstream effects. Is that an accurate premise? And can you sort of educate us a little bit
Absolutely.
more?
So there are two elements to it. The first element is the physics aspect. So we have a very distributed footprint. We have over 274 data centers worldwide. And so that allows us to have POPs, points of presence worldwide for our customers to connect. We have a very strong backbone network that connects all of these data centers. On top of that, we've enabled a lot of software capabilities that make networking very easy for customers. It's all done through our portal. It's pay as you go, and it's extremely easy to activate. It takes minutes to actually to activate a connection to a ServiceNow or a AWS console. And so I think the idea of having one highly distributed footprint very well connected through a backbone network, and third, adding the software layer on top has really made us that a very differentiated offer.
Now, we've said for many years now that the definition of cloud is expanding. And it's, we've talked about multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. Obviously, on-prem is still a thing. Sovereign cloud is a big thing as well. You also have relationships with those members of the ecosystem, the Dells, the HPEs, IBM, NVIDIA. Talk about how they fit into the overall strategy and connect into this redefined cloud world.
So a couple of things. As I mentioned earlier, in the hybrid cloud world, a lot of hardware needs to be parked somewhere. While AWS has its own offering called Outpost, a lot of enterprise customers want to be somewhat independent. They want to have the hardware sitting somewhere else in a colocation facility. So Dell has an offering called Apex. HPE has an offering called GreenLake.
Yep.
Those offers are really ideal for a hybrid cloud environment. We also have partners like NVIDIA, that are launching DGX, which is an as-a-service offering. And so we are a DGX certified partner for NVIDIA. And so there are all of these partners, they form an ecosystem of service options for an enterprise so that you're not limited to just for public cloud options. You have options to create something on your own and build your own private AI factory or a sovereign cloud solution. To your point around safety, security, sovereignty, a lot of customers are wanting to maintain control. So it's a balance. Some workloads belong in public, some workloads belong in their own environment. And that's where having partnerships with a Dell, HPE, or an NVIDIA really matters.
And that's what these worlds are coming together. And AWS has its on-prem offering in local zones with outposts, which I presume can fit into your...
Correct. So we are also AWS's largest Outpost partner, and we have the most number of Outpost deployments at Equinix for AWS.
I want to ask you about energy. It's obviously a hot topic.
Indeed.
I was listening to a little bit of some of the conversations on TV today. Energy keeps coming up as a potential blocker to the AI wave. Maybe it's a blind spot, even though everybody's talking about it. How should we be thinking about energy, the increased requirements of energy? How are we going to accommodate that? And what do you see from your vantage point?
Great question. If anything that bothers me from a growth perspective for the industry and for us, it's actually availability of power. Power is the new oil, to be honest. And availability of renewable power is even a bigger constraint because everybody is looking at sustainability goals. They want to have clean energy and clean power for these data center applications. So in the short term, building new power plants or relying on small modular reactors, which are the nuclear options, are going to be difficult. It's going to be a 5 to 7 year option. A lot of companies are looking at solar, and they're looking at geothermal. A lot of companies are also looking at battery backup units. So that would be something that will allow power management, in the evenings when you're not able to use solar. And how you optimally use the renewable resources in the short term is going to be an interesting challenge. Companies are looking at using gas or natural gas, but that is something that's not truly green. Over the next 2 to 3 years, there is certainly some power constraints, and companies are getting creative around what they can use from a grid perspective, from a gas generation perspective, etc. But over the long term, I'm very optimistic we're going to find 3 or 4 different options. You may have heard of a company called Fervo Energy. They've done a deal with Google for geothermal, where they're looking at generating about 1.2 gigawatts of geothermal power, and it's completely renewable. We are also looking at very large solar plants. Recently, Saudi Arabia has built almost a 1.3 gigawatt solar plant in Saudi Arabia, and they're looking at doing a lot of AI work in Saudi Arabia and NEOM. The third area is around nuclear. A lot of new technologies are evolving. It's going to be somewhat regulated. It's not going to be easy to put a nuclear reactor in your backyard. So I know a lot of regulatory concerns are there around nuclear, but long term, it's actually a lot cleaner, and it's a lot more viable solution for our data center industry. Over the next 5 to 7 years, I'm very optimistic that we'll have a viable nuclear solution as well.
So you got the 5 to 7 year time frame. So the regulatory constraints are a headwind.
Indeed.
Am I correct that there are some regions of the world that are further ahead in nuclear? The U.S. is behind, I think. But there are places, I think China, France, maybe Japan.
France is. So in fact, UK is getting a lot of its power from France, and it's nuclear. It's a mix. So in the UK, they use natural gas, and a nuclear comes from France. So you're correct. Some markets are ahead in terms of nuclear. Some markets are ahead in terms of renewable, like geothermal. So for example, you're looking at Iceland, you're looking at Nordic countries. They have a lot of wind, and they are exporting power down to Central Europe. So there's certainly some really emerging markets for renewable powers for data centers. And today, the constraints around putting data centers in tier 1 markets like New York or Silicon Valley, they're going away. People are looking at Midwest. People are looking at putting them in Canada, in Calgary, where there's more power available. So I think the market is shifting away from tier 1 to tier 2, tier 3 markets.
And hydro?
Hydro is, again, building a hydro dam and a hydroelectric power is a 7 to 10 year project. It's not easy. It's a really long-term solution.
So it sounds like, I feel like T. Boone Pickens. This is an all of the above thing.
It is.
Because the requirements are so massive, you're going to have to attack this from multiple prongs.
Indeed. All the projections we are seeing, we are looking at anywhere from 30 to 40% CAGR in terms of power needs over the next 20 years. And that's just not going to come from one source. We're going to have to look at a lot of different sources, including geothermal, nuclear, gas generation, turbine, and solar.
Mm-hmm. And what about liquid cooling? How does that play in? I mean, you got to cool the hot chips.
Indeed.
It's not going to solve the energy problem, but it's going to actually allow these hot chips to work, right?
We are in an interesting transition phase. Right now, we're using a mix of what we call air-cooled and liquid-cooled. In many cases, we are not transitioned completely over to liquid cooling and cooling even at a chip level. I think we are probably a year or 2 years away from that. In the near future, and when I say near, I'm looking at 24 to 36 months. I would fully anticipate 100 kVA plus racks. They are going to need cooling at a chip level, and we're going to have to redesign everything we build. So the actual physical real estate footprint is going to shrink, because we are going to have very high power density racks, but we are going to have to cool them at a chip level. And so the technology is evolving really fast. We are making significant investments in a liquid cooling area as a company. And watch this space. We're going to make some really cool innovations that we're going to be announcing in the coming year.
I got a tour in October, I think it was, it was in November, of a Dell AI lab.
Yes.
And they were showing us exactly that. It was a hybrid direct liquid cooling on the chip, but also using fans, and it's software able to optimize, and you had to put the earplugs in to go into, and then there was no hot aisle. The hot aisle was actually in the rack, which was kind of novel. I guess it was novel to me anyway.
So I'm going to share a statistics that you may not be familiar, but some of the newer high power density racks, the noise levels that they create, it is equivalent to a jet engine. So you are sitting next to a jet engine and you could go deaf. So it's really loud. And so we have to really think about employee safety as well when they have to wear ear protection and overall, physical PPE to make sure that they remain protected due to prolonged exposure to these kind of noise levels.
Well, KJ, the data center is booming, and Equinix is at the heart of that boom. I really appreciate coming on. Now, audience, you should be aware that we've got a follow-up on this interview with Equinix. We're going to be doing something out of our Palo Alto studio, so look for that. Stay tuned. It's going to be bringing AWS and Equinix together, kind of a look back at what happened at reInvent and what we can expect going forward. KJ, thanks so much for
Thank you so much for having me, and look forward to working
great
with you
conversation.
next time.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, and thank you for watching. Keep it right there. This is Dave Vellante. You're watching theCUBE's coverage of reInvent 2024. We'll be right back.